When my boss first asked for a single lock of hair to seal our loyalty before my first promotion to regional manager, I thought it was just a strange, eccentric billionaire quirk. I was so foolish, my dear, so incredibly foolish. I sat in his glass-walled office, the AC humming like a funeral dirge, and watched him pull out a pair of gold-plated scissors with the gentlest smile. He looked like a grandfather offering a sweet. I didn't see the predator hiding behind those designer frames. I didn't see the trap. I just saw the corner office, the 6-figure bonus, and the life I had been dreaming of since I left the village with nothing but a tattered suitcase and a head full of ambition. It started in the gleaming heights of our corporate tower in Lagos. Everything was polished steel, imported marble, and the smell of expensive cologne that masks the scent of desperation. Mr. Adebayo was a god among men. He built an empire out of thin air, or so they told us. He walked the halls with a soft, predatory grace, his eyes never quite staying on your face. They seemed to be looking at something just behind your left shoulder. When he called me in for that first promotion, he didn't talk about sales figures or quarterly growth. He talked about legacy. He talked about the kink in the chain that held our company together. Just a small snip, Chioma, he said, his voice as smooth as velvet. A piece of your essence to bind your ambition to mine. It's a tradition, you see. Every executive who sits at my right hand has given a piece of themselves to ensure this company never falters. It's a tiny price for power. I laughed it off then. I thought it was a test of my commitment. I leaned forward, tilting my head, and felt the cold steel graze the back of my neck. Snip! Just like that, a tiny lock of my dark hair fell onto his mahogany desk. He swept it into a small velvet-lined box, as if he were collecting holy relics. My promotion came the next day. The pay was incredible. The perks were intoxicating. I bought my mother a new house in Enugu. I finally felt like I had arrived. But the atmosphere in the office began to change. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air go thin? That's what it was like. My colleagues, those who had received their promotions, began to change. It wasn't overnight. It was a slow, agonizing erosion. Kule, our head of operations, was the first. He started coming in looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were bloodshot, constantly darting toward the ceiling as if he were hearing a sound nobody else could detect. He would sit in meetings, nodding in a rhythmic, mechanical way that made the hairs on my arms stand up. He wasn't participating, he was performing.
Then there was Sarah, our brilliant VP of marketing. She used to be the life of the office, always laughing, always pushing boundaries. Now, she spoke only when spoken to, her words clipped and devoid of emotion. She wore high collars every single day, even in the sweltering heat. One afternoon, I caught her in the ladies' room, staring into the mirror with such profound emptiness that I actually dropped my bag. She didn't blink. She just stood there, her hands twitching against the porcelain sink. I asked her if she was okay, and she looked at me, truly looked at me, and whispered, "I can feel him pulling, Chioma. Even when I'm at home, I can feel him tugging at my thoughts." I dismissed it as burnout. We were a high-performance team. The pressure was immense. But the curiosity was eating me alive. What was he doing with those locks of hair? Why was everyone looking so haunted? I started watching Mr. Adebayo. I became a shadow in my own office. I noticed that he never left his floor after 6 p.m. I noticed that the janitors were forbidden from entering his private study. I started staying late, hiding in the break room, watching the security feeds on my phone. One night, the storm was raging outside, rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows. The building was empty, or so I thought. I saw Mr. Adebayo walk into his study. He wasn't carrying a laptop. He was carrying a wooden bowl that looked like it had been carved from an ancient petrified tree. He set it on his desk and then he reached into his drawer and pulled out that velvet-lined box. My heart was thumping in my throat like a trapped bird. He opened the box, he took out my lock of hair, then he took out Kunle's, then Sarah's. He placed them into the bowl, and as he began to chant, a language I didn't recognize, something deep, guttural and ancient, I saw the light in the room begin to flicker. The shadows on the walls seemed to detach themselves from the objects they belonged to. They began to dance, and then I saw it. I saw the reflections in his window. My colleagues, standing in their own homes, were suddenly jerking their heads, their bodies moving in sync with the motions of his hands. He wasn't managing a company. He was puppeteering human souls. Before we dive into the heart of this nightmare, my darlings, I want to ask, where are you watching from today? Are you in the bustling streets of Lagos, or perhaps feeling the chill in London or Johannesburg? Drop it in the comments below. And please, if you love these stories that peel back the layers of this life, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to be warned. Your support is the fuel that keeps this engine running. Now, a quick reminder. I am Afro Softy. This story is a product of my imagination and my creative process. But the shadows I'm shining a light on, those are real. The hunger for power, the secret we keep to climb the ladder, the way we sell pieces of ourselves for a seat at the table, those are very, very real.
The terror that washed over me was cold enough to freeze the blood in my veins. I couldn't breathe. I backed away from the screen, my hand covering my mouth to keep from screaming. The sound was deafening in the silence of the office. I froze. On the screen, Mr. Adebayo stopped his chanting. He turned his head slowly, looking directly into the camera lens, as if he knew exactly where I was. He smiled, and it wasn't a human smile. It was the smile of something that had been waiting a very long time for a feast. The next day, I walked into the boardroom for our quarterly strategy meeting. I had spent the night awake, clutching a crucifix and whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was a child. I was going to quit. I was going to walk out, move back home, hide under a rock, anything to get away from him. But when I reached for the door handle, my hand wouldn't obey me. It was like someone else was operating my muscles. I watched, horrified, as my arm reached out, turned the handle and pushed the door open. I was walking, but I wasn't the one directing my feet. My colleagues were there. Kunle, Sarah, they all looked perfectly normal, perfectly groomed, perfectly successful. But behind their eyes, there was nothing. It was like looking into a series of beautiful, empty houses. Mr. Adebayo stood at the head of the table. He looked refreshed, vibrant, younger than the day before. "Welcome, everyone," he said, his voice echoing with a strange harmonic resonance. "Today is a day of transition. Today we finalize the contracts that will cement this company's dominance for the next decade. Everyone has their signature ready?" I felt my bag move. I felt my hand reach inside, pull out my fountain pen and lay it on the table. I tried to scream, but my mouth stayed shut. I tried to stand up, but my chair was anchored to the floor by an invisible force. I was a spectator in my own body, watching as my own hand picked up the pen to sign away not just the company's assets, but my very essence, my freedom, my future. Then, the twist. The moment I thought I was lost forever. Just as my pen tip touched the paper, the lights didn't just flicker, they exploded. A deafening crack echoed through the boardroom like a lightning strike hitting a tree. The glass walls shattered, raining down like diamonds. And in that darkness, a different voice spoke. It wasn't Mr. Adebayo's, it was mine. But it was a voice I had never used before. It was deep, commanding, and ancient. You have played with the spirits of the ancestors, Adebayo, the voice boomed, and I felt the weight of 1,000 years of wisdom behind it. You thought you could harvest the hair of the living to chain the spirit, but you forgot one thing. The hair is the crown of the head, and the crown belongs to the divine, not the collector. Mr. Adebayo shrieked. It was a sound that didn't belong to a corporate titan. It was the sound of a cornered animal. I saw him collapse, clutching his chest. The velvet-lined box on the table burst open. All the locks of hair, mine, Kunle's, Sarah's, they didn't just lie there, they started to smoke. They curled up, glowing with a fierce violet heat, and then they swelled into the air, creating a vortex of energy that filled the room. My colleagues began to scream, but it was a scream of awakening. One by one, they collapsed, and when they rose, the emptiness in their eyes was replaced with a fire I recognized. I felt the leash snap. I felt the cold, invisible tether to Mr. Adebayo dissolve. I slammed my fist on the table, and the sound was like a thunderclap. "The contract is void," I shouted, and the power behind the words wasn't my own. It was something that had been waiting for me to stand up.
Mr. Adebayo scrambled backwards, his expensive suit now torn and stained with some dark viscous substance that was leaking from his own pores. He looked at me not with power, but with pure, unadulterated fear. He realized then that he hadn't just been collecting hair. He had been collecting the collective rage of every soul he had tried to break. And that rage, it was a tidal wave he couldn't hold back. He tried to run, but he couldn't move. His own shadow, the one that had been dancing for him all those years, rose up from the floor. It grabbed him by the throat. It wasn't my shadow, it was his. It was every lie he had ever told, every life he had ever stunted, every soul he had ever diminished, coming back to reclaim its debt. He disappeared, not into another room, but into the floor, into the very foundation of the building he had built on greed. When the dust settled, the boardroom was silent. My colleagues were sobbing, holding each other, finally free. We didn't report it to the police. How could we? What would we say? Our boss was consumed by the shadows of our own hair. We walked out of that building as the sun was rising over Lagos, the city waking up, completely unaware that a corporate empire had just been dismantled by a few strands of hair and a whole lot of ancestral intervention. I never went back to the corporate world. I learned that when you chase the kind of power that requires you to sacrifice a piece of your soul, you're not climbing the ladder, you're digging your own grave. My dear, this life is deep. We see the flash of the car, the size of the office, the title on the business card, and we think we want it. But have you asked what the price of the ticket is? Sometimes the most successful people are the ones who have given away the most of themselves, bit by piece, until they are just shells, walking puppets of their own ambition. As our elders say, when the drum beat changes, the dance must also change. You cannot keep dancing to the rhythm of a master who wants to eat your future. Here are the lessons we take from this, my darlings. 1. Watch the quirky red flags. If a boss, a partner, or a friend asks you to do something that violates your comfort or dignity under the guise of loyalty or tradition, run. Narcissists love to dress their control up as eccentric personality traits. 2. Your essence is sacred. Your hair, your name, your image, these are extensions of who you are. Do not give them away to anyone who views you as a tool rather than a human being. 3. The power of solidarity. Mr. Adebayo could only control us because we were isolated. Once we realized we were all suffering the same invisible weight, we became a force that even his dark magic couldn't break. Always look out for those around you. Your freedom might be tied to theirs. 4. Ambition is not a substitute for morality. No promotion, no bonus, and no title is worth the loss of your conscience. Once you lose yourself, no amount of money can buy you back. I am Afro Softy, and I am telling you, stay vigilant. The world is full of people looking for a lock of your hair. Keep your head high, your eyes open, and never, ever stop listening to that small quiet voice that tells you when the music has turned sour. Until next time, keep your spirit protected and your heart pure. I am out.